Hello, hello. Welcome to Ushirikatv, where every woman's story is valid. In other series, we've been talking about the pastor's wife, the unspoken pastor's wife, and the issues that they've been going through behind the scenes. And in this next season, we want to talk about the pastor's kids. Do they also go through the same process? Must they become pastors because their parents are pastors? What is expected of a pastor's kids? Come join with me and stay tuned. Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To Ushirika, Ushirikatv.
Good to be here.
Good to see you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Karibu sana.
Yes.
Yes. Now,
Yes.
Karibu sana. Today we are talking about the pastor's kids.
Oh, yes.
You happen to be one of them for as long as I've known you.
Yeah, I've been there since high school.
Wow.
Yes, my father has always served in the church. So we've always been in church.
Wow.
Then eventually he became a pastor, and here we are.
All right. So
Yes.
tell us who Ruth is before we go to the issues of a pastor's kids.
Ruth is a wife, a mother to 4,
Wow.
3 biological and 1 foster, 3 boys and 1 girl. I have grown up in church, generally. I always have this joke that says, I've been born in church, I've lived in church. I am born again. I got born again at an early age of 9. Having been brought up in a Christian setting, we always had fellowships at home, we always had prayer. So I knew God at an early age, but I realized that I need to give my life to Christ at 9. And moving on in my teenagehood, I was filled with the Holy Spirit of God. Of course, it's a renewing journey. Every day we get refreshed. Later on, I got married to a pastor. Yeah, and together we served together at KG, Gateway Chapel.
Yeah.
So the beauty is I now happen also to serve with my dad. So the journey continues. I think I should publish a book, Serving with Your Dad and Serving with Your Husband.
At the same time.
And for me, it has been a journey. I never knew I'd find myself there, but I've enjoyed. Many things I know spiritually, I learned from my dad. So my dad is, yes, my biological dad and also my spiritual father. And I'm glad to serve with him. Besides church, I'm also in the insurance industry. And that is a nutshell of who I am.
So you're also a career woman at
Yes,
this point.
I am.
Okay.
Serving the Lord and serving in the marketplace in the insurance capacity. I've also served for quite over a decade now, and I love doing what I do.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So that is Ruth.
Yeah.
So in case you want to get some information on insurance, she's been it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Tell us how your journey has been as a pastor's kid. It's unfortunate that most pastors' kids, they end up landing on the other side. Unlike you who's been in church, stayed in church,
Yeah.
don't know, you know. Others, I don't know what it could be your story, but other stories have been, some of them hate the God their parents serving because sometimes of the issues they have been through as a family. As somebody quotes and says, original salvation comes from the home. So you can tell us, what were your challenges? Did you have any, ama wewe tu ulikuwa, your dad is a pastor? Did you ever feel
Pastorhood
like
is not a title. Being a pastor is a calling. And before my dad was ever made a senior pastor of the church, dad already had the calling. He was prepared because dad has always been in church. You can imagine being an elder. We used to be in a bigger congregation. And then when we changed location, I was in high school, boarding school. So I came back and I'm like, oh, dad is a pastor. So at first I thought, that's a promotion. That's a good thing. It didn't click that I'm actually a pastor's kid because dad has always served. Things he always used to do, nothing changed, okay? Because dad was first a father to us before he became a pastor. And I think the challenge is for kids to deal with their father first before they deal with the pastor. I call myself a daddy's girl. I'm the 5th born in a family of 5. That makes me the last born. We are 2 girls and 3 boys. And we've all had our different experiences. So that tells you I'm the longest, I stayed longest at home. I have served with my parents. We moved to the new location. And then having moved to a smaller congregation, there were many opportunities to serve. Opportunities I didn't know, or I never got an opportunity in the bigger church. I learned so much in such a short time. We moved to an area where it was a cosmopolitan a church where you preach in English and also there has to be an interpreter. I didn't know I could interpret. I was an interpreter at one point. I was in ushering. At some point, I joined the Sunday school ministry, which I'm passionate about, and then I got the confidence to also become a praise and worship leader. Probably some of the unsaid things are that you have to involuntarily volunteer. You just find there's a gap, and all of a sudden, why don't you hold on to some before people come and grow the ministry? So we started the Sunday school ministry. There's no one to usher. Why don't you go there? There's no one to interpret. And I really thank God, because from an early age, I can imagine I'm in high school. Anytime we used to close school, I used to come teach my kids. We used to go back to school on a Sunday. I come back in my uniform. I'm teaching the kids, and then I go back to school. So it taught me leadership from a very early age. And in high school, I was a CU chair lady, and I took it in stride. And I was also an official in all the clubs that I was in. I still remember when I was finishing my high school, my parents were really called, and I was also part of it. We were receiving so many awards. So for me, it formed leadership. Going to a small church, many opportunities, and my parents believed in me. So I didn't know I could sing. I was a bit shy growing up. I mean, I think for me, that was my greatest in being a teenager. But then my parents having been in church, nothing changed that my dad has become a pastor. But as I moved on and I grew up, got into college, and immediately after high school, I joined School of Ministry. That is another avenue I really thank God that my parents supported, because a lot of kids immediately after school go to college, go to campus. For a whole year, I went for School of Ministry, and we were out doing missions. We went to door, we did crusades, and it now helped me understand what ministry is all about. And I thank God for the opportunity. My dad kept on involving me in leadership responsibilities. He believed in me. And for me, I really enjoyed serving with him, and I still do. Now, being a married person, and now serving with my husband, and now understanding what now the pastoral story entails, I would want the same to work for my children. Only they're the ones to say, am I really doing what my father used to? My father was always there. So for me, my dad never missed any of my visiting days. My dad never missed an important occasion, all the graduation ceremonies. My dad was there. And it made me feel I'm dealing with my dad first, and then now, yes, I respect him. This is a pastor. And so there was that divide. Unfortunately, yes, some pastors' children feel that there's a lot expected of them. And that is not different. Having been raised by a strict mother, it was expected of us to toe the line, to be with the right company. And so when she became a pastor's wife, probably she would have her own challenges, but for us, it was my mom bringing us up. I didn't have to behave differently because I'm a pastor's child. But now looking back, I'm thinking my mom really had a higher pedestal, to meet for us to go in a certain way. And I really thank God for how we have been brought up. I don't think I was the rebel child, except, of course, the adolescence flare-ups here and there. Being in church and being expected to serve, for me it was a joy, and because I was closer to my dad. Of course, as you grow up and children come in, your mom becomes your best friend, and dad still. But for me, it was, I want to please my dad, so let me serve. And in the process of pleasing, I end up loving what I do. And I do it in so much confidence. And I loved it because he prayed with us. My dad was the same person you would meet outside church and in church. I wouldn't have a different story about my dad. The way he prayed in church, he prayed for us. Like there was this culture my dad had. Every 3, 4 a.m. he would wake up, and I'm this person who is alerted anytime the lights go on. And dad would come, anoint us, pray for us. Wow. My brothers were in the other room, pray for them, anoint the place. And the same, we would see him praying for people in church, and we would love it because this is my dad. And so for us, it was a continuation. We were serving at home and then going back, because also at some point my dad was in the banking industry, but then later on he retired and fully now came to church. And so my journey is just amazing, serving. Besides the expectation to serve and be in particular places, I actually enjoyed, and I'm currently enjoying being a PK.
Wow.
Yes.
Your story is different. Do you have, is there this one thing you'd say, those days, if not now that you adapted it, now that you enjoy, after you said something that you had to please your dad, so you're doing it to please until you started.
And then it gets into you.
Yeah. Is there at one point where dad told you, I wouldn't mind if you ever became a pastor or get married to a pastor?
Interesting. I have one sister who is also married to a pastor. We always joke and say, I think my parents prayed that we get married to pastorhood. But personally, I had said I'm not getting married to a pastor. Growing up, I tended to feel, not my dad, but just across, I used to find pastors boring, pastors too demanding. And having grown up in a pastoral home, I wanted something different. I almost felt like no one would force me, and my dad would never force me to marry someone. But I know they would pray, because, probably they would see me with someone and they would increase and intensify their prayers. And then eventually I introduced them to the man whom I'm married to. And even at that time, he was an associate pastor. So in my mind, I'm like, yes, this guy is just an associate pastor. It's okay. He won't tell me to leave my career, to serve. There is never one point they told me you have to marry a pastor. As a girl, we are always attracted to your dad as the first man. And so I got attracted to someone who is in church, who I saw pray the way my dad would, who would serve the way my dad would. So I got attracted to this man who I loved. Now, unfortunately, we have those people who don't like who their father is, but everyone loves their dad. I'm reminded of this burial where the children said in their eulogy that I think the church will miss our dad more than we will. That was a very telling statement, because the father was in church throughout. And it's true, the church was mourning because this guy was in church throughout more than he was in the home. My dad went to all lengths. We actually never missed him at home. He was always there when he needed to. He was in church when he needed to. But quite some things changed when we went to the smaller church. Because there was a gap in many responsibilities, there was a lot of visitations. And my dad would go for all these visitations, and he was more involved. There was a lot of him being needed than when we were in the bigger congregation, but then again, the roles were different. And so I would say my dad handled it with grace. And so for us, just seeing him serve people, I think the downside is where they start talking something ill about your dad, and then you get to hear it. And
we are coming back. Right, hold that thought.
Yes.
We will be back. We are coming back after the short break. We'll be right back. Hold that thought.
Thank you.
We've been talking about the pastor's kids and how Ruth has gotten to a journey as a pastor's kid with the parents being pastors in a big church and a small church. And she has enjoyed serving. She was doing it to please her father until it became a passion. So now we want to hear the flows, the flip side of when you hear stories of people talking about your parents, how do you take it? How did you come back? So yes, Ruth, you're telling us something.
In a church setup, there are many issues and responsibilities. Now we call them, they're under welfare. There would be a death in a family. There would be a newborn. There would be graduations. There are families represented in the church. And at some point, there was an expectation that the pastor should attend all this for us. You know, and I mean, the journeys my father has gone to. And the stories my mom reminds me from way early, because Dad has always been in ministry. Those days, Dad had a car. And his car was really used by many people in ministry. And then he would get to service it. It was never really taken care of. Now, coming back, now we are there. Dad may miss out on some events, and there would be a case of he didn't go to house A, B, and he went to YZ. You know, there should be some favoritism. And, you know, knowing Dad, it really felt bad. And you can't go there and defend. Maybe even when they're talking about you, they don't think you're there, or they don't think that you actually had. Dad is a generous man, and Dad would give out. Maybe there would never have been a debate, did Dad give more here, or he didn't give more in this other place, but mostly it was in the participation. He wasn't seen in this meeting. He was expected to be there, you know, throughout. And Dad is a human being, you know, he would get to rest at some point, but then there was that expectation. We always used to go church. You're the first ones to arrive, and you'll be the last ones to leave, you know, and sometimes you want to go home and rest. Tomorrow is Monday. You're either going to college, you're either going to school, but church day is the day to serve. And at some point, it registered in our heads. Even today, okay, right now with kids and all, maybe we are not the first ones to arrive, but you would almost be the last one to leave. And probably if there was a birthday party, you would miss out because you're in church. You have to come out with your parents, you know. If it is in a home that maybe it would not be good for this pastor's child to be seen in, I would not go for some birthday parties. I would not go to some events, which I felt, those are my friends. I never went for any sleepover. You know, and that's why right now probably it would be a debate with my kids if they would ever tell me about a sleepover. Even going home, but maybe this is more on a family setup, we were always coming back home. And that is how we were brought up. Probably it was my mom just ensuring we were on the straight and the narrow. I have never worn a trouser to church.
Wow.
You know, there's one time I felt like I think I need to get this, but you know, my mom was just categorical, no. Later on is when I'm thinking it was just the image, and at some point I had this particular probably dress I used to wear, and it was almost like, Kwani, there's no other, because generally the rest of the week I am back to me. You know, having grown up with boys, because my sister is out of the country, she left quite early, and she's been there for over 20 years. So I grew up with my brothers. So they toughened me up, I would say. And you can imagine if I was with them more, I would also dress like them. So I just became a lady. We're catching up, you know, as time moved on. But there was that expectation. I remember I was in a youth meeting and I was a leader. And then we had some fun moments and I made a joke. And this lady was like, "You mean you joke? You mean you laugh?" And I was taken aback. I'm like, where am I? You know, to date, I still have to be comfortable with the crowd I'm in. People who know me as me, people who will not judge me. There's a lot of judgment. We almost become the SI unit. I still remember another lady in church who's like, my kids want to make a dress like yours because they like it. And now I realized, oh, so there's also an expectation. I think I should not dress in a certain way. They are called, why don't you mentor my kids? I became a mentor from a very early age because there was an expectation you should be like this person. So even when I am not in my best place, because I mean, growing up, you would feel like, I also want someone to talk to. But then silently, you just have your own issues because you're the mentor. You know, you're the SI unit. Why don't you be like pastor's, you know, daughter, come talk to my children. Being in the Sunday school ministry also now made me know children. And I used to share with the parents about why don't you work on this area with your child and all. Your child mentioned 1, 2, 3, why don't you go? So the parents really found me very useful to be like, okay, then I think why don't you work with them?
Like you get an info.
Yes, but also I had my own meltdowns, but I would not speak to anyone in church. You know, probably I remember I also was a bit unwell. And I remember I went to hospital, there was surgery and all. But I think very few got to know about it. Yeah, somehow it was like, yes, you know, you will get well, you will get out of it. And so I didn't feel probably the same support that had been given to church. For us, you will sort yourselves, you will, you know. Exactly, the just shall live by faith, you know. And we were so used to giving until receiving is not expected. Yeah, but I wish people would know that we are ordinary children. You know, that you just need to love us, you need to understand us, you need to pray for us. We make mistakes like every other child. We are not a clean book. In as much as I'm saying I grew up in church, I was a teenager. I maybe never flared out because I think I considered myself a good girl, but I still had my own issues with no one to talk to, you know. But thank God for the prayers of my mom. I think prayers is what took me through that period, took me through my serving, took me through the meltdowns. Yeah, and so as pastors' kids, because of the being misunderstood, and you want to believe they will pray for you, and there's some good sides when, yeah, they want to bless the pastor's family. Oh yeah, I think that's the time you're like, oh yeah, it's good to be in the pastor's home, and they visit, you know. And my dad has a lot of friends. Actually, we always tell him he's the only one who's not a bishop. A majority of his friends are bishops. He's always gone in the church front. But I mean, he remained as a pastor and served well, still serving, you know, until the time maybe he will rest. And so they're the ones who we used to see home. Our home has hosted people. I think for a long time, I forgot my bed is mine. We were always, there's a family coming. And to date, because of having been shown how to host, I now became a host. I love hosting people. Anytime there's an opportunity to host, it's okay. But at that time, it was tiring. Every weekend, almost every weekend, we are hosting. Dad is visiting. This person has come for prayer. We were so used to having visitors. Thank God for my mom. She really made our home a gracious home just to welcome people to date. And we're trying to at least borrow a bit of what we saw.
And here you are.
And here I am.
Then married to a pastor. I
tell you, that is a story I still look back and get amazed. I am here and we're serving.
Your story is interesting. Do you have those expectations like Ruth should dress like this because she's
now I'm no longer just a pastor's kid. Now I'm a pastor's wife. You can imagine now I'm reading from the book of my mother, who has modeled very well. My mother taught me, as I go back to your question, to pray. And my parents generally taught me, they brought me to a place that I needed to know God for myself. And so once you know God, you have your own personal transformation. And so I don't have to do things based on what everyone is saying. Because my personal transformation is good enough. So why do I need someone else's pattern someone else's lifestyle. Once I know it is good, it is pleasing, it is acceptable, I would try to pursue that. What maybe someone else may not call modest, and I feel I'm modest, then I'll just pray that they would come up if maybe...
And understand from where you are sitting.
Exactly, because I don't think I would deviate and be a different person. But yes, because of that expectation, maybe I would know this time you're going with my parents, I would almost imagine my mom will dress up this way. I think I need to match up with her, you know, or I would, it's somehow unconscious, you know, you just want to be like the perfect person that they expect you to be. Just like I said, it started by, I love doing this. My dad loves seeing me sing, so let me sing, you know, and he would encourage me. I would sing off key. My voice would probably not go beyond some rows. You know, I was just coming out, but because of the encouraging words, anything. So the expectation bit is still there. So somehow unconsciously, I'm very careful also not to make someone else fall. I just want to make sure that they will get to heaven.
You pray for them that they will get to
I
heaven.
know, and it should not be a stumbling block, you know, as Paul says. Yes, you just pray with them,
Before we come to the end of the show, what would be your encouraging word to that pastor's kid who feels, my parents' God is just in another place. I don't understand this. All these issues, sijui visitors coming to our home, sijui my father telling me we must go to church, sijui I shouldn't put on a tight jeans or something. Yes.
There is a blessing in being a pastor's child because this is a calling from God. And when God calls, He also provides. And you may not probably see it right now, but there are so many things that have worked for me in my life because of the blessings of, yes, being a pastor's child. There's a covering in our home. I would also encourage them, sit down with your parents. First of all, they are your parents. Relate to them as parents, not as pastors. Because once that is broken, and being parents, every parent has a good responsibility or an expectation for their child. They would want to ensure that they're the best parent. So it's only that you didn't choose to be born in a pastor's child home, but now you're there. So what do? You just flow, ask God to give you grace, support them where you can. I know some cases where they don't feel they don't want to serve in that church anymore, or they feel that I will not be able to get friends if I say I'm a pastor's child, maybe for the younger ones. But now as an older person, the blessings I get, and right now even serving in the same capacity now in church, it is by virtue of me serving and submitting under their calling that even I am doing well where I am, even in my career life, now as a mother and even as a wife. There are many blessings. First of all, just by honoring your parents. You know, yes, you've obeyed them, but now honoring them, especially now by virtue of their call. I would encourage you, hang in there. It's never that bad. You know, it's a blessing because they're serving God, and there are blessings that would come to them. And to just encourage them to be supportive of their parents. I think, yes, the parents would really love it when the children support what they do. And if they can serve, I mean, it will even be an extra blessing upon them.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, as we come to the end of this show, I am sure somebody out there has been blessed, has learned, has picked what works for them. But I think for me, as Ruth has said, it is a blessing to be a pastor's child. And at the same time, it's a challenge because you have to keep up with the pace.
Yes.
My friend, hakuna shortcut. You have to keep up.
Oh, yeah.
And I would also pray for parents who are pastors, It is your call, not their call. Your work is to be a steward.
Yes.
Walk them through the journey.
Yes.
Thank you for staying tuned here at Ushirikatv. I was your host, Sue Kiruma.